All right, welcome everybody. I'm Robin Anselmi of Conversant. This is today's episode of Community Dialogue. We have Sehba Ali of KIPP Texas Public Schools with us, which we're really excited about. And Bill Boyar, the Vice Chairman of Conversant and founder of Boyar Miller, a law firm in Houston, Texas. Emma Rose Connolly is with me again this week, which we're really excited about. We'll just let everybody join. It usually takes a minute or two. As you're joining, we'd love to hear from you in the chat today. Let's see, what would I like to know today? Today, I'd like to just know what's a word that describes how you're feeling today. So let's get a check-in from everybody about how are you feeling today in the chat. Emma Rose, you want to give people some instructions about that?
Sure, yeah. So the chat, just make sure you change the setting. The default is to just panelists, and it would be great if the whole community can see how you're doing and any questions or comments that you have for the day. So go ahead and change that setting to all attendees and panelists. That would be great. And I'll be watching the chat and making sure that if any questions come in, our lovely panelists get the opportunity to answer them for you.
Yes, so Emma Rose will try and keep us straight today. Like I said, we're joined by Sehba Ali of the KIPP Texas Public Schools. And just as a reminder for folks, we've been doing these broadcasts since the start of COVID-19 here in the United States back in March as a way to engage in a community dialogue about leadership. And today we're going to be talking about timing and what is it time for now. But before we jump into that, Sehba, you have been doing some amazing work. You and your colleagues have been doing some amazing work down in Texas with the KIPP schools. Can you just tell folks a little bit about the KIPP schools in Texas and some of the stories about things you've been up to since the beginning of March?
Sure, Robin, and thank you all for having me today. So KIPP Texas Public Schools is a public school system or a charter school system in the state of Texas. We educate about 29,000 children in our 55 schools across the state. And so we actually merged 2 years ago to become KIPP Texas Public Schools from 4 different KIPP organizations. And so we came together to do that a couple of years ago. Lately, what we've been up to since COVID hit is really taking care of our children and our families as a primary priority for us and ensuring that they're continuing their learning journey. About 90% of our children are low income. Most of them will be the first in their families to go to college and graduate from college. And so they really can't afford to lose any learning time. So we distributed about 13,000 laptops, our entire internal supply, to children. We've helped them get internet access at home so they can continue their online learning. In about 6 days, we completely turned our educational system and created a distance learning system, both with a website as well as live meetings with teachers through Google Meets. We've also really been thoughtful about how we feed our kids. So most of our kids, about 90% of them, rely on KIPP to feed them breakfast and lunch and a snack every day. So we have been feeding our kids through curbside meal pickup. We're serving about 10,000 meals a day right now, every day. And then for kids who can't come to KIPP to pick up meals, we're actually using our bus service to go into our neighborhoods and deliver meals to children. We've also set up a COVID-19 and beyond fund to provide direct support to families who need it during this time. Many of our families are living on the edge of despair, economic hardship in the regular everyday. And now with COVID, with furloughs and job loss, they have really felt incredible and severe economic hardship. And so we've been providing Walmart gift cards and grocery gift cards to families to help them put meals on the table.
So, but what a fantastic story. And when we think about what is it time for, you all were really challenged by that question back in March, right? To figure out what it was time for kids and for families. Just amazing stuff. We're gonna start, and as we get into what is it time for, Bill, you have an interesting perspective about what is it time for right now amidst the COVID crisis. So what would you say are those top three things that it's time for right now?
Well, thanks, Robin, and Sehba, thank you for joining us. My perspective comes from all the things I'm involved in. Obviously, I'm involved with Conversant as the vice chairman and work every day on the business side, working with the team. I'm involved in a law firm that I've had founded 30 years ago, and we're dealing with the challenges of what it's like to provide professional services in a virtual environment for the first time. And then Sehba and I partner at KIPP because I've been chairman of her board for 5 years, and have been side by side, step by step, as I've watched and participated in what we've done with KIPP. So the learning for me is, as leaders, we have 3 areas that we ought to be focused on, and it's time to focus on now. One is finding stability in our organizations and for our people. Another would be living in our purpose and living and operating and behaving consistent with our values and sort of our culture and testing our culture. And then the third is strategy. Okay, what do we do about strategy? Is it time to think about it today, to reset? Obviously we can get into that more, but those are the 3 areas that I think it's time to explore and understand and focus on today.
Let's play with those a little bit. So Sehba, I'm so interested to hear what in the world you have to say about stability amidst this crisis. But I'm guessing you also have some things to say about stability more broadly, given the population that you serve and the level of instability that they feel on a day-to-day basis. So I'd just love for you to hear, what do you think as leaders at KIPP Texas you've been able to do to create stability, and how have you been able to do that?
So at KIPP, we've had for the last 25 years of our existence a saying that we really take to heart: we are the constant, not the variable. And for the population that we serve, it just really needs to ring true all the time. It's our job as what we call big KIPPsters, the adults, to provide constancy for our children, to provide stability for them, to really create environments in the school that they can depend on, systems they can depend on, people they can depend on, and routines that they can really hold on to, because oftentimes there are parts of their personal lives that are unstable. And so we really want to provide that stability at school. And it's been even more important during this time to be steady as leaders and to be really thoughtful and not knee-jerk about the decisions that we make, to be really in tune with the care and the need for community at this time amongst our students, but also amongst our adults and amongst our families. And it's really important for us to just always remind our team and our families that our mission remains the same. It doesn't matter that we're in a crisis. It doesn't matter whether we're in a hurricane or whatever crisis we're facing. Our mission remains the same. Our job is to make sure that our KIPPsters have what they need to be able to lead fulfilling lives, to graduate from college, to have successful careers. And so it's really important that we keep that mission and our values front and center as we think about how to wrap around our families and our children during this really unstable time.
So Robin, I think that stability, there's also something in there that sharing fear and vulnerability is part of what people are looking for in their leaders. Transparency, information, Sehba's done a magnificent job of staying in communication on a daily basis with an audience of over 30,000 people every day, and a team of 4,000 or 5,000 people, which is hard to do effectively. But transparency, accuracy, regularity, and to me, vulnerability. We all fear the present, the unknown. And to be open about that, I think brings people in, brings a greater sense of a trust and community. And at the same time, you have to be the rock. So it's an interesting dichotomy of challenge for us as leaders.
Absolutely. And I think that there is, for us, what we ended up doing is we communicated with our families about every other day and with our team every single night. And a lot of times what we said is, we don't know what's next. We don't know what's coming, but here is what we do know. And here is what we stand for. And that doesn't change. And I do think that that brought a sense of unity and a sense of stability to our team, even though a lot of times we were just saying to them, we actually don't have the answer yet.
It's interesting. We've talked about this in, I think, one of the other calls, and it's, I think, in some ways, it feels conflicting to people when I say this, but like inside of stability, actually saying, I don't know, is helpful, because if anybody claims to know all the answers right now, they've got to be a liar or really overly confident in their abilities, because there's just nobody has all the answers. And so the stability and the trust that you can create by saying, like, I don't know, but we have things we do know that we can stand on and stand in to help us solve these challenges, I think is critical for leaders. Because if it's just, I don't know, and I throw up my hands, that is going to cause a lot of consternation, fear, and confusion. But being able to say, I don't know the answer here, here are the things that we do know, which I think brings us to the second point around culture, right? So I think some of the things that we do know are the cultural elements of an organization. And Seb, I know you're rightfully proud of you and the team and the culture that you've been able to create for KIPP Texas. Can you just say a little bit about what that is and how the culture has been an asset for you throughout this?
Mm-hmm. One of the things as KIPP Texas is that we are really clear in our purpose. There is no question about why we're here or what we're doing. We're very clear on our mission. And even though we've actually rebuilt our mission statement, the purpose behind our mission, the idea behind it, has remained constant for 25 years. And so just knowing that we're here to help our kids lead fulfilling lives so that they can be the change that we want to see in the future has been very, very clear to us from the start. And so that is very grounding for our team. In addition, we went through, as we created KIPP Texas last year, we went through a very rigorous process and a very inclusive process involving over 1,000 folks from our team and alumni and students and their parents to create a set of organizational values that we deeply believe in and are rooted in. And so during this crisis, we have constantly been able to come back to that purpose and come back to those values and root our decisions, root our communication, and root our direction in those values and that purpose. And that has been really unifying for our team. It's also given everyone a clear sense of, we're not going to go off the deep end and do something that's dramatically different or drifting from our mission or stop doing the things that we did to make promises to our children, which we believe are sacred. And so I think that has added to the sense of stability. And it was helpful that we already had these organizational values that we could then root our communication in and grow them even deeper rather than trying to create them during this time.
I think a lot of organizations have values, right, that they put on a wall somewhere. Do you have an example of you walking the talk of one of your values? Is there one in particular that jumps out at you that you think is exemplary?
So for us, we have an overarching value that we call as a team and family, we. And team and family for us is this sense of team, but also the sense of we wrap around each other and really care for each other and are in community together. And so for us, one example during this time is as a team and family, we. We've actually reached out to all of our families and all of our staff to ask them who needs help during this time, who is in dire economic stress, who needs help. And so we just distributed last week 2,900 gift cards of $150 each to Walmart to each person who came to us and said, I need help, I can't pay my bills. what we found is most of our families and staff were having trouble, the ones who were in desperate need were having trouble putting food on the table and having enough water. And so we were able to immediately shift our entire fundraising strategy and said, we're not fundraising for KIPP anymore in the way that we normally do for our growth. Instead, we're shifting to provide direct support to our families in need, to our alumni, to our staff in need. And that's where we're really going to focus all of our resources. And so we've raised about $1 million in the last month or so for that fund. And as I said, we distributed for the first time gift cards to families who need it. And then we're getting ready to do a second wave of support and then a third wave of support after that.
So Robin, what's really fascinating to me about sort of culture in evolving organizations is there was an overriding purpose to KIPP and KIPP Houston and KIPP Austin and KIPP San Antonio and KIPP Dallas, but we merged all 4 regions into one. And in the middle of 2018, so we're almost 2 years into this merger, and the process of bringing that organization into under one umbrella of sort of behavioral guideposts, values, has been a huge effort. And nothing will test the integrity of values more than a crisis. The organizations that use, as you said, have values posted on the wall as a sort of marketing tools or recruiting tools will be severely tested if they weren't really part of DNA. And what Sehba has and her organization has been able to do that I find remarkable is to actually transform 4 different regions into a single organization with a single unified culture. And it has, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, really withstood the test of stress. And what makes me feel great about that is on the other side of this, we are going to be stronger together. We will be stronger as an organization, we being KIPP. Any organization who has discovered in this crisis that their culture really is at the core of their being as an organization will be better, will be stronger, will be more nimble, and will be more confident on the other side. The organizations that are going to find out that it really wasn't their DNA are going to have challenges.
So, but what I loved about the story you told also is it really was, what is it time for now, like in this very moment for our teams and our families? So that raising money for KIPP Texas was not the thing it was time for. You could have kept doing it, right? But that it was really time to support these families in what they needed, I think was just an amazing pivot, and really using your culture as the foundation for that. So it wasn't just, well, what is there for us to do? It's no, if we look at who we say we are, what does that tell us it's time for now? And I think that's such a beautiful demonstration of what we mean by timing, which is what is it time for now, given who we are in the world and who we are together. So I think that's really fantastic. At the end, by the way, for those of you who are here with us, we are gonna give you the link for if you wanna make a contribution and help out the folks at KIPP Texas. We'll give you that link before we get to the end of today. Sehba, you talked about it for families. I'm so, as a mom, I'm super curious what you've been, like, what has this been looking like for your kids and the virtual classroom? We've all seen all the memes out there of people that are trying to homeschool and what they're experiencing. What have your kids been experiencing in this timing? What has the culture enabled you to do that maybe has surprised you?
Yeah, you know, as a mom of 3 children myself, I examine what our KIPPsters are experiencing in their classrooms quite closely, and with a attuned eye of thinking about what my own kids are experiencing for sure. So what our KIPPsters are experiencing is, first of all, in the first week of this pandemic, every single teacher reached out to and got in touch with every single student. So there were no students who were left behind here. It wasn't, well, we'll reach out to 80% and that's good enough. We actually, some of our kids were stranded in Mexico, some were in other countries, we found a way to reach out to and connect with every single one of our students. And that was really important to just show that we care and to ask them what they need. And then after that, in terms of classrooms, what we've done is we have a few different ways of operating right now, depending on what kids can access. So we have a distance learning portal on our website that's actually free to everyone. All of you can go on that as well for your own children, with a bunch of different resources for online distance learning. And then every single day, our teachers host on Google Meets class. For our pre-K 3 students who are 3 years old, that might look like coming together and singing a song together, right? Or it might sound like a teacher reading a book to a child or to a group of children, and asking parents when they can to get involved. For high school, our high school kids are actually taking their advanced placement, their AP exams next week. And so they are in full prep mode for those AP exams, and they are having class every single day. Now we've shortened the school day so that it's not, 10 hours like it used to be, but they do have every class every day so that they are getting that rigorous instruction. What's been really important for us is always starting with a message of community and care in every classroom. So every single teacher starts the day with, how are you doing? With a circle time to check in on our students and our families, because our students are experiencing a lot of trauma right now. Their parents are lost their jobs in many cases, they're at home, sometimes multiple families living in the home or in the apartment, and some of our kids are homeless. And so we really are starting with that message of community and care every single time, and then going into instruction. And we want to make sure that our kids are continuing their learning path. This isn't just about, let me give you some activities to kill time, or let me just do review. It's actually new content that's being provided on a daily basis, so kids are continuing to further their journey.
Is there anything that's been surprising to you out of that? Like something that went just different than you expected it to?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I was really nervous and scared that we were standing up a whole new organizational system and educational system in 6 days. Like, that's pretty scary because we've spent a lot of years building what we currently have. And so I think what's been surprising to me is that our teachers have been able to catch on really quickly and have really made that connection in the classroom that started in person, right, which is really important, but have been able to continue that connection with their students and their families in such a real, authentic way. So I get to visit classrooms every week. I pop in on Google Meets and spend some time in classrooms. And I was in a classroom yesterday where the teacher, with a lens of care and community, was really pushing her students and was like, it was a middle school math class, and she's like, you've got to learn about median mode and all of those things, because you're going to need this in the future, and here's how it's going to be applicable. And I really care about you and love you, and I know that this is a really difficult time, and I'm going to help you and wrap around you with support, but I still need you to learn.
Yeah. I think that message of starting with care and community, I think a lot of our organizations are either learning that lesson or not during this time, right? So whether it's a school system or not, I think, how do we start and really make sure that our employees and our peers and our colleagues know that care and community are paramount to us so that we can all be stronger, Bill, as you were saying, and better as a result of this experience. I'd love in the last couple of minutes to talk just a little bit about strategy and what is it time for now in regards to strategy. Bill, I know you have a point of view about this. You want to say something about that?
Sure. A lot of my clients and colleagues have been struggling with, we went into, we had a good year in 19 and we went into 20 with a budget and a plan, and we had a good January and February, and then the world blew up in March. What do I do? Do I scrap my plan? Plan could have been for 20, could have been a 5-year plan. Sehba will talk about the strategic plan that that we adopted at KIPP Texas. But my view is that it's about today and tomorrow and next week until we get more certainty. and to go through an exercise of trying to predict what the world is going to look like is premature. So I'm just really discouraged anybody from like investing time, energy, and talent in thinking about long-term future until we have more perspective and more facts, and just really focus on what it's time for is today and tomorrow and next week, and getting through in baby steps to the end of the beginning.
And I think when we think about timing and strategy, there are still some things we do know, right? So even in all of this, there are some things we do know. So when we were talking earlier this week, you were talking about the thing that you do know is the teachers that you need to hire for next year. Will you just say a little bit?
Sure, yeah, and Bill gave me this really sage counsel as well when he said, when I had an inclination to make a knee-jerk reaction about growth, he was like, slow down. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Just take a deep breath and think about your strategy. And what, he was so thoughtful in advising me on is that our strategy really doesn't change because our mission remains the same. How we attain those same outcomes may change. So the strategy within the big strategy may change, but how we attain those outcomes, while that may change, the big overarching goal doesn't change. And so as it relates to that, we're thinking about teacher recruitment, finding the best talent has always been one of the core elements of our strategy, and one of the things that we really have to get right. And during this season, we still have to hire teachers. We still need about 1,000 teachers to be able to teach our kids next year, 1,000 new teachers. And so while, all of our old mechanisms of come in for in-person interviews, teach a sample teaching lesson, take a tour of the campus, none of those are working right now, right? And so we've had to completely pivot and rebuild a new teacher recruitment strategy and implement it very quickly. And yet we know that the overall need for teachers has not changed, and we can't shift from that. And so it's really, how do you find a new path in this time to achieve the same things that you wanted to achieve, and not make knee-jerk reactions and say, forget it, we're just not hiring teachers this year. That absolutely would not work.
Yeah, so when we think about timing, I think one of the critical elements for all of us to be that we still are committed and dedicated to, right? So for you, it's teachers. For me, the other thing that I've been talking to people about is, what have we been learning we want to carry forward, both personally and professionally, right? So I think we've all been learning lessons. Are there, not to just dismiss all of this experience, there are key things that we've been seeing that we may want to actually inform our future differently than we might have guessed in January. So I think that in terms of what it's time for, some observation of what are the things we want to be intentional about and carry forward, and what are the things that we know are going to be just the pillars of who we are in the future. I cannot believe that we're almost at time, but we are just about at time. I want to absolutely make sure that we get a moment just to put into the chat for those of you who would love to help the folks of KIPP Texas. Emma Rose is going to put a link for you in the chat. Sehba, for those who don't know, what does KIPP stand for?
It stands for the Knowledge is Power program. We actually started as a small program within a big school 25 years ago, and that's where the name came from. And Great. Knowledge is Power still holds true today.
Beautiful. Sehba, I cannot thank you enough for everything you're doing in Texas for kids and for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining. Even $10 would make a difference, and I don't want to sound like the person on the telethon, but I am going to do it anyway. So if anything that you can do to help would be fantastic. Sehba, cannot thank you enough for your time here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.